Good morning. Today is Saturday. It's 6:48 a.m., November the 10th, 2012. Just wanted to start off and thank everybody for all the good thoughts. It's really helped. It's been a very nasty week, very trying, the worst week in our lives. I nearly lost Kathy several times during this past week. We're out of the danger at the moment and into recovery. Again, that won't be easy, but at least it's positive and forward moving. So thank you very much. It was close. It was one of those drive the car very fast and almost cause accidents, race to the hospital kind of things. Very, very difficult time. No sleep starting last Friday for me for several days. I think by Monday I'd had 4 hours of sleep contiguous and maybe a couple of 1 hour or 40-minute naps prior to that. Caused me to be a little rough on some individuals. I'll have to apologize later, although a couple of them I can think of were real assholes at the time. Nonetheless, though, my reaction was over the top. In any event, though, again, thank you very much, very sincerely to everybody. She's going to be okay. We're going to be able to pull out of this, I think. I'm very positive about it, although I'm beat down at the moment. Nonetheless, there's a good reserve key in there. So, this is a new Wu, and we have all kinds of crud to go through, because while I've been involved in intimately studying the operation of hospitals for the past week, all kinds of stuff has happened. Let's start at the top of my list of erratic notes. And we find that we now have pretty definitive proof that not only the Egyptians with the pyramids and a great number of their structures, and not only the Cambodians with Angkor Wat, and the Thai people with their pyramids, and the Inca with their constructions, and the Maya and the ancient Vedic Hindus all used a nearly identical form of cement in their constructions. Analyses of chunks of, quote, stone taken from the pyramids in Egypt, as well as chunks of stone pilfered from here and there, show that it's not stone at all, guys. It's actually a really sophisticated form of what we would think of as Portland cement made into a concrete, and done very well. Also, there seems to be some stereoscopic or thermosetting component to some of the cements that were used as mortar. So, and again, also some of the other cements seem to show high temperature resistance capabilities. So in any event, it looks like our pan-global civilization that's spread from all through South America, through parts of North America, over into Eurasia and Africa, use cement as one of its central infrastructures, as we do today. And they use basically the same formula around the whole planet as we do today. So this is very interesting, because it ties them in at a very central focused area. We also know from the construction of some of the pyramids and the archaeology, I mean, for decades now, we've known that the Maya have been the longest consistent civilization on the planet, and preceded the Egyptians by several thousand years. And we get to a situation where we discover that they were probably the originators of the cement and the technology that then spread around the planet. So the supposition that the Europeans, when they visited the Maya, were a first point of contact, of course, is bogus. But also, it does seem to indicate that at that point of contact, the Europeans were dealing with what we could think of as a much degraded civilization. That the ancient Maya, through Inca or Mesoamerican civilizations probably had peaked about 1,500 years earlier. And so they were, when the Europeans ran into the whole Quetzalcoatl myth and all of that kind of stuff, they were dealing with a remnant civilization that we could think of very much as like a Mad Max world that was attempting to utilize technologies and infrastructure that it had not built, that it was several generations away from having built, and to a certain extent probably had lost a great deal of the capability and technology that was inherent in that technology at its peak. So Europeans come along and they see this vast civilization, thinking that the people that were living there at that time were its originators and its masters. And in fact, they were, to a certain extent, the degraded descendants of those masters. So this is an interesting take on things, because it also falls into some of the other thinking of Fomenko out of Russia about historical revisionism. And the basically the huge pack of lies that academia in the Western world and the Western world influenced other parts of the planet throws at you in terms of our personal collective history as humans. So we need to really think about and probably reconstruct and redo a view of our past and who participated doing what and where were the central areas. Because, as Europeans, people think of the Egyptians as the site of it all, or the Sumerians and so on. And in fact, they were central to their region, but they may have been nothing more than basically colonies or colonial outposts or provinces of a much larger Central America, Mesoamerican-based civilization. So, just an interesting point there. Let's see. Okay, so let's get into some really interesting stuff here. There's just a bunch of strange annotations to go through. Let's start off here with this. Recently there's been the appearance of these articles by Daniel, who is a source person for the ever-gullible David Wilcock. Now, I don't think that Daniel himself is necessarily purveying misinformation deliberately, nor do I think he is lying or any of that sort of thing. And actually, Daniel appears to have a fairly bright mind and a decent grasp of vocabulary and its use, and is very articulate. However, some of the conclusions, necessarily, I mean, all of us make erroneous conclusions from our data just because of our personal warped view of reality. But there are some conclusions that Daniel's making in some of these articles that he's written that I find unwarranted. There's other areas that appear to be very astute, easily understood descriptions of basically the same kind of thing I'm talking about. In one of Daniel's more recent articles about time and timelines, you'll note that he talks about alterations of the coordinate time system and how you're kind of stuck with them. Well, that's my thinking. Once you shove something from one time into another time, you alter the time that is receiving that something. This is basically the same discussion I had about complexity and how if you shove something from our time into the past, the wave that creates that time then and all the material forms in it must necessarily accommodate this new form of complexity and has to do things it had not prepared to do. This is anthropomorphizing and providing it with emotions and so on, which obviously don't exist, but are helpful to our thinking about it and certainly to our discussion of it. So if I take somebody today with all of the modern diseases and conditions and pollutants in their body and I shove them back into the 1800s, their body will still have to be recreated in the 1800s by the wave there, the pulse from universe that creates all things, but it'll have to do so at a greater level of complexity than everything else around it. And that greater level of complexity within the waveform will persist for some period of time, even absent the person from the future. Once they go back, there's still this residual wave of complexity that is required to be continued until it gradually fades. Many of these same concepts are discussed by Daniel in his recent writings, albeit in different terms. Now, some of the things he does bring out in there, I take issue with. I think this guy, Dan Burish, is a huge fraud and is a royal pain in the ass to everybody and is disinfo up the yin-yang. yin-yang is something we need to think about too. But in any event, Burish claimed to have healed the timeline way back when. He claimed to have beat all the J-rods to pulp or some damn thing, or shoved something up Majestic's collective butt, and the timeline changed and we're all healed. So, claims, self-aggrandizing claims like this have a tendency to be off-putting and to make me question any information coming from the mind that's pronouncing those same claims. I don't find this with Daniel. I think that he's simply accepting that information as being valid, and he may have some point. I don't know. Burish may just be. He may have experienced some of this stuff and have distorted the rest of it in his mind to being the savior of the planet and all of history, while having experienced something in reality. I question all of Burish's story because I don't find anything original there. It's all repetitious of material that had existed prior to Burish coming onto the scene, so he could have picked it up anywhere. Even if it's merely cryptonesia, it is nonetheless a repetition of stuff that didn't actually occur to him. Therefore, I dismiss Burish as just put a circle around him and a giant question mark because it's an unknown component to the whole story. So the fact that Daniel references some of the stuff from Burish is due to their common connector, which is David Wilcock, and David Wilcock may be contributing to Daniel's acceptance of Burish by contributing a certain sense of credibility that I don't actually invest in Burish. Nonetheless, though, Daniel has got some good descriptions about time and how it sort of functions. My thinking in terms of energy, the whole, materium, being just nothing but a giant collection of energy in a very complex form, get you a lot further along in this thinking and provide you even some mathematical clues as to how to navigate it that are absent in the material world view of things. Which brings us around to the idea of Vedic math. Vedic math is an interesting subject. There's all these formulas called sutra, little one-line things in Vedic math that are great little formulas that any kid who's having math, any parent out there that has got math troubles besetting their child, please go get a book called Vedic Math and plow through it yourself, because the formulas eliminate all of Vedic mathematics here. Let's see, what's the guy's name? There's 4 or 5 different versions of it. Excuse me. Anyway, though, the Vedic mathematic sutras allow you to do very complex math very simply, because it has reduced them to a formulaic approach where you don't care to know, for instance, how to do long divisions because it's totally unnecessary to arriving at the correct answer. And this is even true if you follow the formulas all the way out into their extreme yogic versions. You get to formulas that deal with irrational and otherwise unreal or imaginary numbers. And so, for instance, it's not a necessity to reduce the square root of a -5 to any form of a digital representation in order to effectively use that as a symbol within your accurate mathematics of navigating through time. Very complex subject, but for those that are into the math, there are clues in the Vedic math. If you'll take it up to the next level of sutras and you start combining the sutras themselves into their longer formulaic versions, you find that, maybe some of this Vedic math is actually, the Vedic math sutras are actually a holdover, a remnant from our previous civilization on how to do such things as temporal engineering, or at least to how to watch out for it when it's being done to you. I'm of the opinion at this moment that indeed temporal engineering is ongoing and has been for some time. I haven't been able to peg when it actually started, and I don't know that that's even really pertinent, because it would just be my personal opinion of that. But nonetheless, it has been ongoing all through my life and appears to be accelerating. We are running into the bumps in the landscape, so to speak, that have been left by these temporal travelers or temporal wannabe engineers, and we have to deal with all of that crap. So there are certain descriptors that can be applied to a temporal bump, and so one can form a specific case equals a general understanding method based on running into a few of these temporal bumps. So in any event, so the Vedic math is really an interesting thing. It appears to be also a holdover from ancient civilizations' understanding of temporal